Are you curious about bodies, pleasure, and possibilities? And what about curious about what others are up to on the planet when it comes to pleasure, sex, and play? Have you considered what pleasure can do for your life, your body, and your bank account? Do you know something magical, delightful, and out of this world orgasmic is not only possible for you, but totally available to you? If you're ready to be the magical, sexual, sexy beast you know you can be, and you just need the tools to get there, you're in the right place. Now, here is the host of The Pleasure Zone, sex, relationship, and intimacy coach and holistic health practitioner, Milica Jelenic.
Welcome, my sweet pleasure seekers. For those of you who are hanging out for the very first time, it's very fun to see you here, and hopefully you know what you're coming in to listen to, because you are on the Pleasure Zone, where we're going to be talking about all things pleasurable as usual. A lot of shows, though, I do talk about pleasure, and I do often talk about the things that stop us from having pleasure as well. It's always good to look at all the different layers and different levels of things. And this time, one of the questions is that I wanted to look at is desire versus actual, desire versus duty. Because a lot of times I hear from one partner or another, and it's not always the women thinking that they're having sex out of duty. There's a lot of times where men also feel like they're having duty sex as well. Duty, not duty as in poop, but there is that's a whole other conversation for another day. Corpophilia, that is a thing. But duty. And then we're going to look at, if you are kind of stuck in the mode of things feeling like they're a duty, how do you move out of that and into desire? Because what can occur is that things can start to feel like obligation. And I've talked about obligation sex on this show before several times, or thrown it into conversations, but I've done a specific episode on obligation sex. This is sort of in the vein of that, however, slightly different, as we're talking about, one thing versus another. So what is duty? How do you define that? What is desire? How do you define that? So one of the things that you can do is, well, we're going to talk about that. Actually, we're going to talk about some tools that you can use to define for yourself what duty is. What have you been doing that you might be doing out of duty rather than out of desire? But before we jump into that fully, I just want you to know that the reason why I've been doing this show and been doing it for over 10 years is because I have a desire to bring more pleasure into people's lives through their own pleasure of them with themselves, and then through pleasure with partners. So whatever your preferences is, one partner, many partners, awesome. If your desire is you, yourself, and you are your own partner, excellent. We can always develop more intimacy with ourselves, get to know ourselves more, and using sex in a very holistic way, which is kind of the theme of my life, as I'm a holistic health practitioner and trained sex and intimacy coach as well, certified. And also, a lot of the things that I'm certified in help along the way with the work that I do to help bodies let go of trauma and stress and bring them into pleasure. So part of the conversation that I like to have on the show, again, if you're new to the show, is giving you tips and tools based on the topic of the hour, which today is desire and duty, and to help us bring back more intimacy into our lives. So why is it that you think that maybe, just a question I'm posing is like, why do you think passion is important? Why do you think desire of your partner is important? What are some ideas that you've used to try and keep it alive in your life? And I've asked people this, and they're like, oh, we haven't. And it's like, okay, that's cool. Step one, know that you haven't tried. Step two, let's create a plan of action. So as a sex and intimacy coach, I don't have sex with you. What I do is I teach you how to have some tools to have deeper connection with yourself and your partner. And I can't emphasize enough that first part that I mentioned. Yes, so get really clear on that. The main emphasis is to actually be able to have people have deeper connection and more intimacy. So what you're going to get out of this show is you're going to get a lot of tips and tools. You're going to be able to find out for yourself what are some of the things that you are doing from a place of obligation or duty, and what are you doing from a place of desire, and getting clear on that. And then being able to have the conversation, starts with yourself, like having that conversation with yourself, asking yourself and then reflecting on things, having, conversation with your partner, and then being able to shift your mindset as well. So we're going to have a lot of fun play on this show. We're also going to learn about how to reawaken your senses. And one of the very first few shows I did in the first few months of my of this podcast is I did like a guided sensory experience using 5 senses, but we know that there are far more senses than that. We just keep it simple for the purposes of being experiential and making it easy. You don't get too much into the descriptions of all the many different kinds of senses, like interoception, proprioception, so many different kinds of sensory ways we can experience things. So more many than 5, but we will use the 5 senses to reignite desire, and we will be doing some uh, play and ideas on how to build excitement, and then using those fun senses to strengthen the desire of your partner for you, but also you for them. So we'll have some fun with that. We're also going to be playing with communication, because as we know, communication is key. So communication, consent, and curiosity, right? Those are my favorites of the 3 C words. There's another C word I'm not going to mention on here because I don't want to get canceled. That's a C word too. So communication and being able to say to your partner and what turns you on, but also admitting to yourself what you would like, and different ways that you can start conversations that are encouraging, that would have you and your partner really have fun discussing what's enjoyable. And then other things in the conversation world, like safe words. Safe words to me are not just, and I actually learned this from a dear friend of mine who's also the owner of the network, that safe words can be used for more than just uh, intimate conversations. They can be used even with friends. You can use safe words to say you're having a conversation with somebody and there's like a limit where you can just go, oh, you that's red, please do not go there, and then respect that and be able to be that space for each other to just go, okay, yeah, you're hitting yellow for me right there. There's some standard easy ways to play with safe words. You can absolutely invent and create your own. And then we're going to get creative. So that's one of the other C's: creativity, consent, communication. uh, yeah, those are my 3 main favorite C's. So we'll be talking about all of those, and we're going to look at maybe some other ideas. We'll see how it goes. So let's hop in. Let's hop in and play with the energy of, like, what is the tension, like the tension between desire and duty. There is like a tension there, and that's a fun word, right? Like attention. So if we could play attention to something, it's also like the tension in something, which is like pulling something to a stress point. And there can be a stress point between desire and duty, where maybe your desire is actually to bring joy to your partner, but you might not be so horny at the time. And so it feels like duty. So there can be a bit of a, like a tug of war that sometimes happens. So in order to define what desire is, it's, desire, we can generally define it as the thing that you are choosing or getting turned on by, choosing to be turned on by. So that's desire. Duty isn't, like, to me, very much in line with obligation, things you think you're supposed to do. So in relationship, we often have a lot of things on the obligation side or duty side, and we have a lot of things on the desire side, which is also pleasure and passion and things that turn us on. And, you know, I don't know if you've heard stories of, like, where women are, like, just lying there. I hear this from women. They're just, like, lying there, their husband's having sex with them, or their partner's having sex with them, and all they're thinking about is, oh, I got to get through this because I have laundry to do. That's another, like, part of duty, as, like, you might feel like you have to do other things, so you're distracted from being present. That's kind of like how you're being pulled by other duties, other than the duty of maybe thinking that it's your job to have sex with your partner, because there are a lot of religious teachings that would tell you, across the board from all religions, that would say that it is part of a marriage contract. In a way, I'm simplifying this, but it's part of the marriage contract to be able to attend to the sexual needs of your partner. And there are definitely, like, expectations around that, whether that's uh, cultural, societal, religious. There are expectations that sex is supposed to happen a certain number of times in a certain number of ways. And I've had people ask me, like, what, oh, actually, I've had this conversation most recently with a friend of mine who's Amish, and she was just curious, like, how often do most people have sex? And I was like, well, there isn't really, like, a standard, but there is um, in the world of evaluating whether somebody's in a sexless marriage or not, or a sexless relationship or not, is it's defined by a certain amount of time that goes between having sex or any kind of intimate relations, sexual relations. And so there's usually a timeline, which is, some define it as 6 months, some define it as 1 year. Sexless marriage can also be defined. I've also seen the definition of where it's having sex once a month, but it's not fulfilling, so it's considered like a sexless, obligatory sex relationship. So that definition of, like, what is normal for how much sex you're supposed to have also kind of plays into duty, like how much and how often. And that defines your job role or your duty in the relationship to how much sex should be occurring. And so that's part of the societal expectations around what is normal, what are you supposed to be offering or obliging yourself in a relationship to do. And sometimes there'll be a time where all things that are dutiful take over the fun and play and passion of your relationship. I don't really like the word passion, frankly, but I'm using it because a lot of people relate to it. Um, it's not my favorite word, and I haven't come up with a better one. So when I do, I'll let you know. Like, turn on's pretty good, but it's not quite that either. Maybe it hasn't been invented yet, so I haven't heard it. Maybe I'm the one who's going to invent it. Who knows? After 10 years of the pleasure zone, I have, I think, invented a few words. I'll probably invent some more. So how how do we define these things? And there are some different tools you can use. I think, before we go to commercial break, one of the things that you can do on commercial break, or even, like, into the next segment while I'm talking, or do this after the show, just take a few minutes to reflect on what are some of the things that turn you on the most, just naturally turn you on. And then also reflect on the things of, when do you feel obligated? Like, if your partner approaches you for any kind of sexual play, do you feel like you need to say yes? Or do you feel like you're most turned on when there is no obligation, or do you feel most turned on when there is obligation? But I think if you can just take a few minutes to look at that, it'll be really helpful for you to know whether you've been operating primarily from duty or from desire. And there can be sometimes an overlap where both of those will occur. And it can be problematic if you're always operating from duty. There will be resentments that build, and eventually it doesn't work. So it's good to know and catch it at whatever phase and stage you're at, and then be able to shift things around, which is what we're going to be working on. So journal down those things. Journal down when you felt the most excited sexually, and also when you felt like it was a chore. So let's figure that out. And then we're going to shift through that in the next segment. You're listening to the Pleasure Zone here on Inspired Choices Network, and we'll be right back after this commercial.
Are you secretly a voyeur, wondering what's going on in other people's sex lives? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual evolution? Are you interested in people who are pioneers of different sexual and pleasurable practices? Lean in now with Milica Jelenic, where she will entice you and your body to know your own pleasure zone. On the Pleasure Zone radio show, with sex, relationship, and intimacy coach, Milica Jelenic, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life, and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for the Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Are you a subject matter expert? Are you here to share your expertise with an audience waiting to hear from you in only the way you can deliver? Are you ready to have your voice amplified across the airwaves? Inspired Choices Network has a global radio platform streaming to millions of people across the world. Professionally produced and supported by an accomplished team every step of the way, you can broadcast from anywhere in the world, knowing your voice matters, and we ensure it is delivered with ease and efficiency. Eager to hear your message, the world awaits. Contact us today to become an Inspired Choices Network radio host. Email become a host at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com.
This is the Pleasure Zone with sex, relationship, and intimacy coach, Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today, join our live studio audience in our chat room at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email, info@milicajelenic.com. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, my sweet pleasure seekers. For those of you who are just jumping in, this episode is all about duty versus desire and how we can reignite passion. A lot of times what happens in relationships after a number of years or months even, the relationship can go from that burning desire, passion feeling, which is usually hormonal based because it's a new partner and everything's new and the senses are new and the smells are new and everything's exciting. And then after a while, sex can start to go from very fun, exciting, and playful to obligatory, duty-filled sex. Every time I'm saying the word duty, it's making me think of poop. Yes, I'm sure that anybody who's like a primarily an English speaker probably gets the same kind of hearing that word in their head. Duty. I feel like I need to say it with an English accent so that it doesn't sound like poo. Duty. And that is an English accent that is from an unrecognizable part of England, just so you know. Okay. So communicating, no, first we're going to go on to the next segment. I'm like jumping segments, but we're going to go to the part about reawakening the senses. How do you reawaken your senses? So let me give you an example. So if ever in your life, you've walked into some new space and you've smelt, for example, a bakery. Let's go into a bakery. And maybe you've never been into a bakery before in your life. And the first time you go into a bakery, all the smells of the bakery are like playing around in your nose. You can smell hints of things like cinnamon and chocolate, and your senses are waking up and your body's getting aroused. And it's like you're then like salivating, things are turned on, your body is interested, and your body is like, yeah, I want 5 cakes. And the same thing kind of happens when you get excited with the partner, right? So your senses turn on, and everything kind of wakes up. And that definitely happens with a new partner that you're interested in. And how do you keep that interest going? For me personally, like I have a thing with smelling my husband's armpits. Like, I love his smell, and that can wake my body up fast. It's like, if I'm bored or tired, or if I'm feeling like moody, it's not even about ending up having sex with him. It's more about having my body feel safe and turned on simultaneously, being that I can relax. There's something about his scent that makes me feel calm, relaxed, and looked after. And there's probably some level of truth with that for people who are in relationships where they feel that they can relax at home, where they can relax into being at home, and their relationship is a way to regulate their nervous system, where some relationships don't help you regulate your nervous system. They put you on high alert, and maybe you're in fight or flight all the time, maybe you're in fawn all the time, maybe you're in freeze. You can be in all these different modes. So when you're with somebody that you can actually be calm and feel relaxed and at ease, sometimes the different sensory responses you have to them are going to help you bring that sense of ease into your life too. So, like smelling my husband, touching him, looking at him, like any of that, like his presence does that for me. So, where I think and maybe there has been times in the past where I haven't been attracted to the person I'm with, which has really only happened once. Ironically, I had a child with that person, and I'm so ironic, but it was like 100% duty obligation related, and fear. Actually, there was a lot of fear that if I didn't do what I was told, I would be like harmed. So that was tricky. But and actually all the smells related to that, even when I smell things that are closely related to how that person smelled, my body will go into like mama bear attack mode. So not a lot of relaxation happening. You can notice these things in yourself, and then you can learn to breathe through them, which we did last week. We did a lot of breathing exercises on the last episode. So if you haven't listened to that, that was part 2 of unlocking the mind-body connection. So go back and listen to that, go through some of those breathing exercises. Probably also I did some in part 1 as well. So having and reawakening your senses, you might find through doing that also your senses do start to get awakened around other things, and there are senses, like sensory experiences, that might trigger you. So some might turn you on, some might trigger you. So if you are getting triggered, remember to do some of the breathing exercises from last week's episode, unlocking the mind body connection. And if you are calm and you're smelling things that are turning you on, fantastic. Keep a mental note of like, the smell of that candle really like helped my body relax. Maybe I'll burn that more. The smell of cooking in the background, or it could be, something as obscure as like cooking on the barbecue. And you're like, oh, that makes me feel like I'm at home and relaxed. And maybe it's like the smell of clean sheets, whatever it happens to be. If it's helping you to feel relaxed, at ease, and like at home with your partner, then bring those smells on. So that's one of our 5 senses. So what else do we want to do for bringing those sensory experiences to life and bringing them into our relationship? Is that we can direct all those sensory experiences to our partner, which is like when I was describing how I like the smell of my husband, the look of him, the touch of him, um, listening to him, except for when he snores. I don't really like listening to his snoring. And yeah, taste is great too. So when your body is excited by your partner, it might actually be even craving that, like a treat, like I'd mentioned, going into the bakery and like getting aroused by smells and things and tastes and having your senses wake up. And so when you don't have that with your partner, or you're feeling like low on that, you can have full experiential sensory experiences with your partner. One of the things that you can start with is just dedicate one night alone to just each sense. So not having sex after necessarily, like this is absolutely just about exploration and no obligation to sex. So the funny thing is about reawakening things is taking sex off the table often will make it a lot easier. It's something that was explored definitely in the works with Masters and Johnson. They explored like how non-sexual touch can be really helpful in reawakening bodies to be able to be sexual. Same with the exploration with senses. They can help you and your body feel reacquainted with your partner. So if you took even one day a week, or 5 days in a row of the week, to just explore one sense. So for example, one night you take half an hour where all you do is you take 15 minutes each to just look at your partner, fully explore, and look at their eyes, look at their face, look at their neck, go down their whole body and remember what they look like from front to back. Explore them fully just with your eyes for half an hour. See how that feels. If you get turned on, good for you. Doesn't mean you're going to have sex. And I'd almost encourage you to wait. Let that energy build. And no, it sounds torturous, but let the energy build. Because what we're looking for is to awaken the senses and have that energy be heightened. So maybe the next day you move to taste and you explore your partner's body from head to toe and front to back with your tongue for might take you more than half an hour. So take your time exploring and also be really clear if your partner doesn't like a certain spot, maybe discuss in advance, you can lick everywhere, but don't lick here or here or here. Maybe don't stick your tongue in my ear. Don't stick it up my bum hole. But other than that, we're good. I don't want to tongue up my nose. So you might want to get clear on the what's okay and what's not okay for you. And yes, sometimes you have to be clear, because some people, when you're just like, yeah, you can lick me from head to toe, and then they start going in places and you're like, what? So be clear that what it is, where it is okay or not okay. So, licking, tasting of any kind, putting food on their body, if that's a preference, right? Like you could put things like jams or uh, like if you are going to use jam, use good stuff. If, chocolate sauce, maybe get, I'm not a fan of like using crummy stuff with like corn syrup in it. So get some like good foods if you want and use them on the body, like an actual strawberry, draw it across the body, all the juices, and that's pretty fun. So taste is great, or nothing on the body at all, just your tongue. Fantastic. Have water beside you though, because your tongue will get dry. Probably. So then we go for touch, and that whole touch experience can be, there's so much to explore. I've done an entire episode just on touch alone, looking at different methods, but particularly the method called the Erotic Blueprint, which is by Jaya, and she helps you go through a whole method of using different tools and different depths of touch, whether that's light touch all the way to like even so energetic touch, even kind of hovering or off the body, all the way to like paddling somebody, right? So impact play, and going through the whole gamut and using the body as an experiential tool to feel all those different touch methods. So we got touch, we've got we already talked about taste, and then I thought about like the things you could also taste, like heat and different lubes and different things that could like hot and cold, and like there's so much to explore on the taste level. Like you could actually take one of these a week and just use them for the whole week in different ways and have so much fun. Like look at your partner in the mirror with you, look at each other. My brain's kind of exploding with ideas right now, that I don't have enough time to like write to track. So get fun with it is what I'm saying. And I think as you do start to tap into it and have fun with it, you're going to notice that it just goes on, and like more things will come out. Smell your partner, you know, touch, taste, smell, listen, have a conversation, which we'll be talking about in the next segment, communicating what turns you on. So that's part of the listening. So we will jump into that conversation when we return from this commercial break. We'll be right back.
Are you secretly a voyeur, wondering what's going on in other people's sex lives? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual evolution? Are you interested in people who are pioneers of different sexual and pleasurable practices? Lean in now with Milica Jelenic, where she will entice you and your body to know your own pleasure zone. On the Pleasure Zone radio show, with sex, relationship, and intimacy coach, Milica Jelenic, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life, and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for the Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
How wonderful would it be to carry your favorite Inspired Choices Network host with you throughout your day? Well, now you can. Inspired Choices Network now has its very own mobile app. Our free app offers live streaming shows, along with thousands of podcasts and TV episodes. Our shows cover a wide variety of topics. Whether you're waking up with us, carrying us through the day, and taking us to bed with you, we're always here for you to enjoy. We're easy to find. Just search for Inspired Choices Network in the Apple App Store or Google Play Store.
This is the Pleasure Zone with sex, relationship, and intimacy coach, Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today, join our live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email, info@MilicaJelenic.com. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, my sweet pleasure seekers. If you're interested in growing the passion in your relationship, increasing the fun, the play, the exploration, the creativity in your sex life, then this episode is here to bring information to you, to allow you to explore the difference between obligation or duty to sex and desire. So a lot of times relationships can start to dwindle because things have become very duty oriented and the desire has kind of slipped. So in this segment, so in the last segment, I was talking about reawakening the senses, and I gave you guys some ideas, like one of the ideas of just taking like an entire week to dedicate one day to each sense. And there are so many different ways to do this. And I think, get creative. I did give you a bunch of ideas. And, one of the things too is to, if you are planning to do like the 5 days in a row, then there's some buildup and anticipation that happens, which can be really fun, and that can add to the excitement. Some of the other stuff that can be done is like during the day, you can like encourage, so you might have your designated half an hour at some point in the day, but you could around that, whether it's before and after, just continue the so say for it's like looking at your partner, continue the looking at them in the eye before that 15 minutes of looking at their whole body. Continue that play after by looking at them. If you're lying in bed, just take the time to look at each other. So on nights when I'm not like asleep before my husband or he's not asleep before me, we often have like 5 minutes, and I sometimes forget. So I try and remember as often as I can, is like how lucky I am that I have a guy who just like was like, I just want to look at you. I'm going to keep the lights on. I'm like, that's the cutest. So I feel pretty lucky that I'm actually with somebody who enjoys looking at me and I enjoy looking at them. And we just might look at each other, and there's a building of intimacy that happens. So I think what a lot of people chalk up to in their lives, of their sex lives, is they forget that there's connection that you can create that can be incredibly fulfilling, that is sometimes not even what you would deem like sex, because it may not be penetration oriented, but it can be very arousing and erotic and pleasurable for sure. So sometimes taking the obligation of sex, or the idea that there's an obligation to orgasm, off the table and just enjoy each other's company can bring you back to being able to be present, which will also expand your ability to have even more pleasure with each other. So one of the senses we talked about was, hearing, listening. And I was saying that before the last segment, that it's what we're going to be talking about in this segment, about communication. So listening and speaking, and how do you express your desires? Like, that's one of the questions that I have from people quite often, is like, I know what I want, but my partner won't hear me, and they won't, when I say that to them, they won't do it. So one of my favorite tools, which is on my website, and it's also in the link of most show descriptions. So if you're on, listening to this on um, YouTube or many other platforms, Inspired Choices Network for sure, you will be able to find a link to my do's, don'ts, maybes list. And it's a pretty simple list. It's pretty vanilla, but it's a really great way to get started with discussions on sex without having to say anything too out loud. So you could print a copy off for you, print a copy off for your partner or partners, do your do's, your do's, don'ts, maybes list. No, I call it yes, no's, maybes list. Yeah. So go on the yes, no's, maybes list, fill in the things that you're all a yes to, that you're a definite no to, that you're a maybe to, swap lists, read them. And then that starts to open up a discussion too. So it's a great way to have a conversation starter, because sometimes people don't even know, how do I even say to this to my partner, because I don't want to be mean. You definitely don't bring these conversations up right after you've had sex. You don't go into criticism mode, or discussions about how things could improve like right after you've had sex. Have it like sometime, you know, relatively hours before, a day before. And if you were really good communicators, you might even plan time for that, where you're like, you know what, can we talk about this maybe on Friday when you're done your work week and you may be relaxing a bit, or Saturday morning when you're more available? Like, can we spend an hour and invest in us having a conversation about our intimacy and our sex life? And I would say, if you have a partner who's both reasonable, mature, and responsible, they'll say, yes, yes, let's have that conversation. They might not know what you're feeling, and they might not know if there's like room for improvement, but you can always, if you have planned in advance, you can always print those worksheets off from my website, and then be able to start the conversation, fill it in, swap it with each other, and say, like, how about if we discuss this? And always, if you need some kind of level of mediation, um, and if you write to me in advance and send me a note about it, I will send you a booking link that will give you 30 minutes. I don't have that available for free on my website anymore, but if you would like a time and you do write to me with a specific scenario that you would like some assistance with, I'm happy to gift that free first half an hour. However, after that, it is a paid for session. So just keep that in mind. All right. So communication is key, and being able to be really clear about your desires is key. So first you got to know what turns you on, which is helpful with all the kind of play and waking up the senses that you can be doing as well. And then knowing, through communication, we can also establish like what are the times that you feel like you're obligated to have sex. Do you ever feel like you're having sex from a duty place, or that you're obligated? I probably have asked my husband that like 20 or 30 times in our marriage. Like, interested? Are you doing this out of obligation? Like, if you feel obligated, we can wait. Like, I want to be like, presenting you with things that you don't feel comfortable with. So, and he's very good at being honest about it and saying when he's like, yeah, I'm not like right now is not good. And I would be, doing this just for you. So I was like, okay, that doesn't interest me. Let's not. So a lot of times it can feel like rejection when somebody tells you the truth like that. So sometimes having somebody there to coach along can be helpful. And a lot of times saying what does turn you on can be a little bit hard because you're not sure of the language, you're not sure how they're going to take it. It can open up a can of worms in ways that you can't even imagine. So having that little list and sharing that as in like a stepping through the door to be able to have these conversations is helpful. It's also important that if you are going to ask for some steps to improvement, to give your partner really positive feedback, at least 3 to 5 things that you really enjoy. Like, I can name 3 right off the bat. It's like, I really love it when you take me from behind. I really love it when you initiate. And I really love it. Um, so many things. I really love it when you spank me. Great. So easy 3, no problem. So you're welcome to any family who's listening right now. I apologize for way too much information in case you are listening. All right. So you might want to just sit down and figure out, like, so a lot of couples do struggle with communicating these things because we're not given language. We're not told that it's okay to talk about these things. People often think that it's a complaint or a criticism. So learning how to word things in a way that are positive affirmations, and then I really like it when you do this. And if you could do this too, that would be great. Like, I really love it when you take me from behind, but if you could also tweak my nipples, I would love that. Fantastic. Right. So that is an and, not a criticism. That's adding information that's helpful to your partner so that they know what you need and what you will receive. So and then I love when you is really helpful because that is saying not only do I enjoy sex with you, but I'm telling you I love you and I love things that we do together, and love your skill set. Like, it says a lot more than just those words. And you can also have some fun with communication, like sexting, even if it's silly and not every day necessarily, but you can just have fun saying like silly little sexting things, or having fun little pet names for each other. Like, I call my husband Sexy Pants. And so when he knows he's being called Sexy Pants, he's pretty much knows that I find him sexy, right? So find names that your partner likes. If your partner is like, I don't like that name, you don't need to go, oh, you're just being like a loser. Like, I've actually heard people say this to their partners, or you're being too sensitive. It was just funny. Oh, you didn't like that? Yeah, they didn't like it. So stop it. End of story. Done deal. And when people are clear with you like that, just listen to them. So when you do have a lot of maybe fear of rejection, you might just let people say things to you that you don't like too. So the communication can get blocked, it can be awkward. And a lot of times journaling can help get all that information out first so that you can kind of approach it in a little bit of a different way where you've already navigated your thoughts so that you can summarize and bring them to your partner. It's really helpful. I did a lot of journaling back when I was younger, and I don't do so much journaling anymore. I also have healed a lot and resolved a lot, gotten a lot of tools to navigate everyday stressors and be able to like regulate my nervous system. And those are things I didn't necessarily have 25, 30 years ago. So I was saying about sexting, that can be really fun because it's something you can do anytime, anywhere. You could write stories, like erotic, sexy stories for each other. That can be really sexy, reading them to each other. Uh, so many scenarios just like literally flip through my brain, reading them to each other in playful ways. Or if you're, also doing any role play, you could do the teacher student role play of story time. Like, I don't know, you can have so much fun with that, but definitely you can add role playing and that kind of method in order to communicate as well. Because sometimes if you have a hard time communicating as you might have an easier time communicating as a character, right? So a lot of different therapies with play therapy use dolls or puppets or toys to help people be able to communicate through the toys how they feel. And the same is true with character play. So if you personally feel like you have a hard time communicating, sometimes doing it through play is really helpful. And then also establishing safe words. That's part of communication as well. And the standard is the red, yellow, green, which we talk about all the time on this show. So red is like a full stop, done. This conversation needs to end, or this action or play needs to end. Yellow is like, you're hitting some levels right here that are, I'm not okay with. And green is, go. Generally, people don't always communicate green unless they are like, everybody's looking for feedback every like few minutes to know that everything's okay in the conversation or the experience can continue. Generally, the yellow and the red are communicated a lot more frequently. So, whew, I just said all that really, really fast in my brain. We are going to come back in the next segment and talk about creating some new energy. So clearing out the old, bringing in something new, being able to spark some new interest in your partner. Because even though, you might have been around each other for 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 or more years, you have hopefully grown individually, and maybe it's time to relearn who each other is, and maybe your desires have changed, and maybe you haven't had a talk about what interests you sexually for a really long time, and you might have grown into new desires. So it's a great time to have these conversations and then to start some new erotic play happening. So we will talk more about that when we come back from this commercial break. You're listening to The Pleasure Zone here on Inspired Choices Network, and we'll be right back after this commercial.
Are you secretly a voyeur, wondering what's going on in other people's sex lives? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual evolution? Are you interested in people who are pioneers of different sexual and pleasurable practices? Lean in now with Milica Jelenic, where she will entice you and your body to know your own pleasure zone. On the Pleasure Zone radio show, with sex, relationship, and intimacy coach, Milica Jelenic, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life, and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for The Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. This is The Pleasure Zone with sex, relationship, and intimacy coach, Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today, join our live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email, info@MilicaJelenic.com. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, my sweet pleasure seekers. So in this segment, we're going to be talking about creating new ideas, new play, and new energy that's for feeling erotic, for feeling sexual, for feeling turned on, right? So we're going to look at, how do we do that? How do we start to create new scenarios, new life experiences? Sometimes people just don't have any ideas, right? That's where you can go to my download for the yes, no's, maybes list. I will be getting creative on there, and there'll be several other downloads for you guys to check out, different tools and things on milicajelenic.com, MILICAJELENIC.com, where you're going to be able to download several things. So, keep going back there on a regular basis, like once a week, once a month. You might find new downloads all the time. So right now that yes, no's, maybes list is up there, and you can use that to help you get out of ruts. And there's different ways you can use that list. So on that list, there's things like locations, positions, toys, those, those like different things to do. And what you can do is you can use the list simply as it is and use the different ideas to fill in the yes, no, maybe column. That's one thing you can do. The other thing you can do, if everything on that list is like, oh yeah, all yes to that, what you can do is you can cut all the ideas out just with some scissors, put them in a hat. So maybe 3 hats, because we do have like locations and actions and like different additions to the thing. So you could put it in like pull 1, here's position, and here's location, and here's toy or something. I made it a really long time ago, so I can't really fully remember all the different things on there. So you can pull them out one at a time, and then you have new ideas. Like it might be kind of like if you've ever played the game Clue, or if you're in England, Cluedo. It's like so and so did it in Mr. Colonel Mustard did it in the library with the revolver, but you turn it sexy, and then you've got like you and your partner are doing it in the shower from behind with a dildo. Like fun, right? It's just like, oh, we hadn't thought about that. Or you had thought about it, but you were in a rut and you needed just something to break the rut and give you an idea. It's like, okay, we just playfully picked these ideas. Let's go for it and try it and see what happens. So that can be like a fun way to bring in new ideas and new play for sure. Or even old play that you forgot about, where you're like, we haven't done that in a long time. Let's do it. So because routine can be a real killer of desire. For some people, they need routine in their day for knowing where they're going, what they're doing, how to gauge different things like progress. When it comes to sex, it's often very spontaneous. And so even when you're scheduling sex, it doesn't necessarily, at first, it can be handy just to get you back on track. But instead of scheduling sex, I think the better thing to do is to schedule time of being present with your partner. So like quality time. And that's like being with each other, sitting and looking at each other, and then playing with some of these tools we've discussed. Whether it's the 30 minutes of looking at each other, or if it's 30 seconds of spontaneously like kissing each other, which I encourage you to do at least once a day. Go kiss your partner passionately for like 30 seconds. If they're open to it, if you're both very open to touch from each other, then touch each other. And if your partner isn't into touch that day and they're like, no, not right now, you're not being rejected. They're just saying not right now. And maybe it's a better time. Maybe they're not in the mood. Maybe their body is stressed and they need to decompress in different ways. So try not to take it personally, but definitely take the time to invest in being with each other. Because one of the things that, I often think about, and that can be kind of morbid, but like, if my partner didn't wake up tomorrow, what would I have wished that I would have done with him? And if there's something left in my brain that I have yet to do with him that I haven't done, say in an erotic sexual way, now's the time. And I know it's morbid, but guys, sometimes you got to go to that place. Just like, if they didn't wake up, what would you do? Like, what would you feel like you're missing out on? And that can sometimes be the most inspirational. Try not to get depressed about it, but it can be inspirational. Enjoy them while you have them, because we're never guaranteed tomorrow. So I hope you guys enjoy some of these tools and tips. Go download.
Thank you for choosing to listen to The Pleasure Zone with sex, relationship, and intimacy coach, Milica Jelenic. We'll return next Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. We hope you'll join us. Until then, have the best week of your life by choosing to be turned on and tuned in to your body.